Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn his heave. It's good. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. Oh, he hit it. Ja Morant, insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parish. This is the, official season preview edition of the episode. I mean, basically, we've been previewing this season. This is the day before the season starts. Some last bits of news and notes and some predictions. I try to accurately, to the 10th of a degree, predict what the main rotation players are going to average this year. It's not a scientific process. It's mainly for entertainment, which honestly is a descriptor for this entire podcast endeavor. But some things to talk about as we look ahead to the Grizzlies opening their season against the Knicks on Wednesday night. First and foremost, Jaren Jackson Jr. injury news. We heard from the team after their practice on Monday that they hope Jaren is going to start 5-on-5, playing 5-on-5 in a couple of weeks. Now, that is in line with what they've told us the whole time about when Jaren is coming back. If Jaren is starting 5-on-5 in 2 weeks, say 2 weeks from today, and then maybe another week or two, he'll be back. If Jaren returns 4 weeks from right now, that'd be about 5 months from when they said 4 to 6 months. He would miss maybe 15 games. Maybe once you start doing 5-on-5 work, he'll be quicker to return. And it could be 3 weeks from now or a little bit over 2 weeks from now. Who knows? I know we've been burned before by waiting for Jaren Jackson Jr. to come back, but this is in line with a lot of what the expectations were. And if he comes back at Thanksgiving or a little bit before Thanksgiving, I think that's going to not set the Grizzlies back too far. So we got a little bit of Jaren Jackson Jr. news. The team is actually practicing right now as I'm recording. We haven't gotten updated news on Steven Adams and Zaire Williams. Zaire did practice on Monday, but I still can't tell, as he's dealing with maybe a wrist and also a knee, what his status for the opening night is going to be. I lean, just piecing together the things that we've heard publicly, that he might not, probably won't play, and Steven Adams is expected to play. Finally, I should have said something on the last episode. I apologize. Killian Tilly did, of course, officially get waived. We knew it was coming for a long time. We correctly guessed it an even further amount of time back, but with his inability to just be healthy enough to play, with the salaries involved, the players on the roster, it seemed obvious for a while that Killian Tilly was going to be that guy who's the odd man out when they had to trim it down to 15 for opening night. Now, heading into this season, you've heard me say many times I have a few concerns, but I'm still pretty optimistic because this team is good, because Ja Morant's good, Desmond Bane is good. There are tons of lineup stats that support the Grizzlies being really, really good with their returning players. But I thought it was interesting. I haven't really given an official exact prediction. I think what I'm going to do, I think right now I'm penciling in the Grizzlies at 50 wins. I do have my concerns about what this team's going to be like without Jaren Jackson Jr. and some concerns about the bench. I thought it was interesting nationally. I'm seeing some people make some pretty strong predictions for the Grizzlies. Tom Ziller, he picked the Grizzlies as his number one seed in the West, which is incredible. Also, Michael Pena, who has been on Fast Break Breakfast many times. He worked for The Ringer, used to be with Sports Illustrated. He picked Ja Morant as his preseason pick for MVP. I think if we're talking awards finishes, I think Desmond Bane might win Most Improved Player this year. I think he's going to get better And I'll let you know exactly how many points per game I think he's going to average in a second. But I think Desmond Bane improves again this year, has a statistical jump again this year. And with the momentum he built last year, maybe it'll be that carryover where you get yourself in the voters' minds the previous season, you get rewarded for it the next season. So I think he can at least finish top 3. I think, he's maybe most likely of all the Grizzlies players to win an award. That seems more likely than Ja winning MVP, but I certainly hope Michael Pena is right and Ja does win MVP. When I'm doing when I'm thinking about my wins total, here's my math that I'm going with. I think the Grizzlies, and I said this on Fast Break Breakfast on our over-under episode, I think the Grizzlies could easily go 13-3 or 14-2 in their 16 games just against the Thunder, Jazz, Rockets, and Spurs. I think the Rockets could be a little bit frisky, maybe not fun to play against, but I think going 13-3 against those teams, it's possible. And then if you do that, you merely have to go 36-30 against everybody else, which seems easily doable. So maybe they're gonna crush that. I also feel like just looking at this roster as it is right now might not be the whole story, like we've talked about before. It's possible the Grizzlies make some kind of trade to bolster their team as we get into the season. And so because of that, I think, if the over-under is 48.5 wins, I'm going over just because of those things. Like, you take care of business, you beat the teams you're supposed to beat. They did a great job of that last year. You get these 16 games in the West against tanking teams, and then you just have to play a little bit over 500 against everybody else. That seems easily achievable. Also, as we know, the Grizzlies' returning starting lineup had an incredible net rating last year in the regular season and in the postseason. And also, the lineup of death that I love, the thing I'm most excited about this season, is seeing this lineup of Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Dillon Brooks, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Brandon Clark play together. Last year in the postseason, in 87 possessions, they had a plus 35 net rating. We're finally going to see that, I think, play a lot this year once Jaren gets back. Very, very excited about that. Also, repeating myself once again, the Grizzlies starting lineup last year, the returning starting lineup when Jaren gets healthy, Ja, Des, Dillon, Jaren, and Steven Adams. And then if you include the top 3 bench players we have, Tyus Jones, Brandon Clark, and Zaire Williams, last year when those 8 guys were on the court together, plus 14 net rating. So I'm optimistic. Can be a lot of good stuff for this Grizzlies team. Now, where I have my concerns that I've voiced before and where people push back at me saying I'm not optimistic enough, they're missing a lot of key players that they had last year that helped them have all this success. And the formula for success last year, we know the steals and the blocks and the defense. They currently, with Jaren Jackson Jr. out, they don't have the players who were 1st, 3rd, and 4th in steals on the team last year, and the players who were 1st, 4th, and 5th on the team in blocks. Also, this shooting is going to be a problem. The made threes thing, particularly while Jaren Jackson Jr. is missing, is going to be a big problem. Melton was 2 in made threes on the team last year. Jaren was 3rd in made threes last year. They're gone. For opening night, there's only going to be one guy coming back who made more than 100 three-pointers last year, Desmond Bane. Now, the way the Grizzlies have trended under Taylor Jenkins and with Ja Morant is they've gotten better at three-pointers every year. They've gone from 10.9 made threes 3 seasons ago to 11.2 2 seasons ago. Last season, they made 11.5. Also, their three-point percentage has gotten better each season. But their league rank is still bad, okay? It's bad. 3 years ago, they were 25th in the league. 2 years ago, they were 24th in the league in made threes. Last year, 23rd in the league in made threes. Now, the remarkable thing is, as we all know, they won 56 games last year. They were great last year, despite not making that many three-pointers. If you remember, if you were a Grits and Grinds listener last year, this team was essentially unbeatable if they made three-pointers. Now, they averaged 11.5 last year, but without Jaren Jackson Jr., without Melton, I don't think they have a formula to get to averaging more than 11.5 this season. When Jaren comes back, maybe, but I'm still worried they're actually going to go down on the number of made threes per game, and that's a big problem for the one-loss record. Teams in the entire league last year, the entire NBA last season, Teams that made 11 or fewer three-pointers won 38% of their games. Now, that number is bolstered by the Grizzlies actually winning. The Grizzlies were 27-19 last year if they made 11 or fewer three-pointers. When they made in single digits, which was a frequent problem, they were 9-17. If the Grizzlies couldn't make the three-pointers, they had a hard time winning. And now, with fewer shooters on the roster, or with depending on Aldama to be a consistent shooter, or depending on LaRavia or Roddy to step into the rotation to make three-pointers, or depending on Conchar, Zaire Williams, and Tyus Jones to shoot more, I don't think the math adds up. So last season, they had D'Anthony Melton, who, again, second on the team and made three-pointers, made 37% of his threes last season. He also had that stretch down the end of the year where he became the first Grizzlies player to make 4 or more three-pointers in 5 games in a row. Last year when Melton made 3 or more three-pointers, they were 20-4. They haven't replaced that shooting. They were 29-8 when he made 2 or more. Now, the good news is, in games that Melton did not play or he made 1 or fewer, they still won 60% of their games. If you win 60% of 82 games, guess what? That's 50 wins. That's an over. So even without replacing the shooting, I think they can hit that over. They can get to 49-50. But I see a lot of people saying or arguing that there will be more usage available for Tyus Jones to shoot more, for John Conchar to shoot more. I don't think that's true. I think we want John Conchar to shoot more, but the idea that he didn't have the opportunity last year or the minutes last year to put shots up is just false. John Conchar played 77 games last year and averaged 17.9 minutes per game. Do you think right now that John Conchar is going to play more minutes this season? It's possible, but I don't know if it's likely. I think 18 minutes per game is about what he's going to get. I mean, maybe he averages 20, but let's say he averages 20 minutes per game, which would be in line kind of with what, like Brandon Clark got last year. It'd be a few fewer minutes than what Melton played. Do you think he's suddenly going to massively increase his three-point volume? Also, remember, he shot a great percentage. We know that, 41% from three. But do we think his age 26 season, he's going to double his three-point output or double his three-point volume? That just doesn't happen, I don't think. It would be really unexpected or surprising if all of a sudden Conchar went from 0.7 made threes in 18 minutes per game to all of a sudden making 1.5 made threes or 2 made threes. Highly unlikely. Same thing with Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones played 21.4 minutes per game last year. He attempted a career-high three-pointers, had a career-high three-point percentage of 39%. Do you think Tyus Jones is going to shoot more three-pointers this year? I don't. I actually hope he's going to play less minutes because Ja Morant's going to be more healthy. The 21 minutes per game, I don't think he repeats that. He attempted a career-high 2.8 threes per game last year. The odds of him shooting more and thus making more, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. You can't make up for the missing when Jaren and Melton are gone. You're missing 3.5 made threes per game. Those are just gone. And if Conchar gives you a half a three made more per game, which I think that's really optimistic, Tyus is not making one more made three-pointer per game. Now, Zaire could, okay? I have a lot of hope from Zaire Williams that he could step up and he could provide a lot of that missing three-point volume. The first part of the season, the first part of his rookie year, last year, Zaire was shooting under 25% from three. Then he missed some games. He got hurt. There was health and safety protocols. And then when he came back for the last 2/3 of the season, he made 33.9% of his threes. He was making 1.4 threes per game. Pretty solid numbers from the rookie. And based on his form, based on how he played in preseason, based on how he played in Summer League, I think it's reasonable to expect that number to increase, that 33.9% three-point percentage to go up. I think we could see him shoot 36, 37% from three, which would be a big boost for the Grizzlies. Now, as far as the minutes, I do not see his minutes increasing a ton. He averaged nearly 22 minutes per game last year. A lot of that was because he started 31 times. Let's go and concede. Let's say he averages 25 minutes per game. I'm saying, all right, Zaire Williams will increase his minutes per game, which, by the way, that would be the most minutes played per game of any bench player in the Taylor Jenkins era. I don't think he's going to play 25 minutes per game unless there's big injuries to the starting wings. But let's just say he plays 25 minutes per game, and he also increases his three-point attempt rate by 20%. So based on his per minute production, we're going to increase his attempts by 20%, and we're also going to increase his minutes from 21 minutes per game, 22 minutes per game up to 25 minutes per game. That would get him to 5.4 attempts per game. Let's say he shoots 38%, which would be an awesome outcome for the Grizzlies. Let's say he makes 38% of his 5.4 three-point attempts per game. That gets him to 2 made threes per game. Now, the problem with math is that would represent him increasing his three-point volume per game of made threes by half of a three. 0.5 made three-pointers per game. Not a whole three-pointer. You're still missing the 2 per game that Melton made. You're still missing the 1.5 that Jaren made. So even though these guys are going to step in and take more shots, you think, even though I don't think so, because it's still going to be an egalitarian second unit. I don't think all of a sudden Conchar is going to, he knows he's supposed to shoot, but Conchar is Conchar. That's who he is. Tyus Jones isn't going to all of a sudden start jacking up shots all the time. Zaire, we hope, gets better, increase the three-point numbers. Even if all those things happen, I think you're still not going to equal the volume of the players you're missing. Now, maybe Dylan Brooks will get his act in order, and maybe he will get closer to 2 made threes per game. Maybe Ja will improve on his 34.5% three-point percentage, and he'll bump his three-pointers up. But those are things that would have to happen, I feel like, just to match last year's output. So because of that has me less optimistic than some. That has me where I can't pick the Grizzlies to be first in the West, or I can't pick the Grizzlies to win 60 games. If you want to, by all means, I hope you are correct and I'm wrong. Again, the Grizzlies are going to be good, but the math of trying to replace those three-pointers, of trying to figure out how this can add up to 12 made threes per game, I just don't see it yet. It's going to have to be something unexpected. It's going to have to be Laravia or Roddy or Santi, Big Santi, doing work. By the way, I think Santi's going to have a big year. What exactly do I think he's going to average per game? I will tell you that right after this short break. If you are in the Nashville, Tennessee area, this Friday, do not miss it. The first Grizzlies Nashville watch party of the year. Hosted by me. Me and my buddies from Fast Break Breakfast will be there. I'll be giving away Grizzlies prizes. I'll be giving away a free Ja Morant autograph poster, plus a bunch of other good stuff. We will be at Noble's Beer Hall at 7 o'clock for the Grizzlies and Rockets game. So tell a friend, come out and watch the Grizzlies with a bunch of other members of Grizz Nation. It'll be a great time. Again, Grizzlies watch party in Nashville, Tennessee at Noble's Beer Hall on Friday, October 21st at 7 p.m. See you there. All right, this might be really weird, but for this last part of the show, I'm going to try to predict what the main Grizzlies rotation guys, the returning players, I'm not going to attempt to do this for the rookies. I'm going to try to attempt to predict what the Grizzlies players are going to average in points per game, rebounds per game, assists per game, and such for this season. I don't know if it's a useful exercise. For whatever reason, I found it fun. I figure if you're the weirdo who found yourself here listening to Grits and Grinds, maybe you would like it as well. I'll put these up on YouTube so you can see them. It might be a better visual exercise than an audio exercise, but who cares? I'm going to plow through it as a way to preview this coming season. All right, first we'll start with Ja Morant, who I think is going to have a career season yet again. He's going to raise his scoring average from last year. He's going to follow in the footsteps some of the great point guards past, like a Allen Iverson or Russell Westbrook or Steph Curry, and is going to increase his scoring average from season 3 to season 4. I see Ja Morant going all the way up to 29.1 points per game. I don't think the assists are going way up. I think it's more of a Russell Westbrook thing. 6.4 assists per game, kind of holds steady there. Maybe a little bump in rebounding, 5.9 rebounds per game. Then 1.1 steals per game, 0.3 blocks per game. Next up is Desmond Bane, who I think is making a similar leap and might get in the All-Star conversation. I got Desmond Bane at 20.3 points per game, 4.8 rebounds per game, 2.9 assists per game, 1.3 steals per game, as he shows that two-way versatility, 0.4 blocks per game. By the way I did this, I looked at their per-minute production, looked at per 36 numbers. I used the rotations, and I used my projections for what the minutes are going to look like per game. And then if I was optimistic about a guy, I would take that per-minute scoring, calculate if they played the minutes I thought they would, what it ended up being, and then I might bump it up or down depending on how I felt the outlook for the player was. Again, it's not a scientific process. It's for entertainment purposes only. But anyways, Dylan Brooks. Dylan Brooks has been very consistent in the last 3 seasons with the amount he scores. In the absence of a bench that I think is going to be very good at scoring, with the need for other people to get shots up, with the absence of Jaren for at least probably 10 to 15 games, I don't see Dylan's scoring going down at all. I do think his minutes bump up from last year and the previous season. So I see Dylan averaging 18.1 points per game. I also see a career high 3.1 assists per game for Dylan, although I don't think he's going to hit that 4 assists per game that he is hoping for. For Steven Adams, 7.4 points per game. I see a bump in points. I see a slight bump in rebounds, 10.2 rebounds per game. A bump in assists, 3.6 assists per game. And then 0.9 steals, 0.8 blocks per game. Santi Aldama, all right. Santi Aldama is a starter. I actually think he's going to average close to 12 and 7. 12.7 rebounds, maybe 1 made 3 per game if you're in a categories fantasy league. I do think his minutes level off when Jaren comes back, but I still have him for this season averaging 9.3 points per game, 5.6 assists per game, 5.6 rebounds per game, 1.4 assists per game, 0.9 blocks, 0.3 steals. Tyus Jones, I'm going to turn down his numbers a little bit because, again, I'm hoping Ja is healthier, and so Tyus plays fewer minutes, but I got him at 7.5 points per game, 4.3 assists per game. For Zaire Williams, I went with 24 minutes per game, slightly more than Melton played last year off the bench. I got Zaire at 10.8 points per game. I put his over-under right around double digits, maybe 11 points per game. Hopefully he proves me wrong with even higher numbers. But 10.8 points per game, 2.7 rebounds per game, 1.4 assists per game, 0.7 steals. Conchar, I'm giving him a career-high 21 minutes per game. His per-minute average, still, I don't think he's going to be scoring the basketball. I have him at 6.6 points per game, though a very respectable 5.5 rebounds per game, 1.9 assists per game, 0.8 steals per game, 0.4 blocks per game. And then finally, Brandon Clark. Brandon Clark, who, with this extension in hand, my dream would be we see him play 25 minutes a game or more, but I've basically given that dream up. I mean, his minutes were the highest his second year. Obviously, Jaren was out for a lot of that time, but Jaren's out right now. I really hope they free Brandon Clark and let him play a lot of minutes. But if he only plays similar minutes to last year, I'm going to bump him up a couple more minutes and say that he's going to play 21 minutes per game. And I got him at 11.6 points per game, 5.5 rebounds per game, 1.4 assists, 0.9 steals, 1.1 blocks. All right, so that's how I think the season's going to play out, statistically at least. The Grizzlies, they start the season against the Knicks. No Jaren Jackson Jr. I think it's going to be a rough one, or at least a trap game. Maybe it'll settle all my nervousness or anxiety about the team right now if they just lay the Knicks flat on opening night. But after that opening night game, you then have to go on the road. You play at the Rockets. That's when we're having our Grizzlies watch party in Nashville. At the Rockets on Friday night. Then second night of a back-to-back, a tough game against the Mavericks. You come home to play the Brooklyn Nets, the new Brooklyn Nets. Man, I wish I could go to that game. The Ben Simmons, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant Brooklyn Nets. You do that game. And then you go on the road for Kings, Jazz, Trailblazers. Now you hope Jazz, that'll be a relaxing time. But that's a West Coast road trip. That's a tough West Coast road trip. So clearly you hope you take care of business against the Knicks. I think a split on Rockets-Mavs makes you pretty happy. 2-1 after the first three, you're feeling pretty good. That Nets game is a tough home game. 3-1 is an outstanding result. 2-2 is fine. 1-3, you got problems. And then hopefully Kings, Jazz, Trailblazers, you hate to say you expect to go 3-1 on a road trip because winning on the road is tough. But 3-1, that would set you up really nicely. If through those first 8 games, I'll be honest, I'll take 500. I'll take 500. 5-3 is a good result from that. You come home then, hopefully you can get right. You get the Hornets at home, the Wizards at home, the Celtics at home, 3-game homestand in the beginning of November. Hopefully at that point, we're talking about Jaren Jackson Jr.'s return. So if the Grizzlies can get to like November 15th, which would be 5 months from the Jaren Jackson Jr., he'll be out 4 to 6 months, which would be 4 weeks from today. So hopefully Jaren's back into 15 games. I would say anything near 500, you're okay with. I think the schedule, it's pretty good. It breaks pretty well for the Grizzlies. I mean, they could be 11-4. It's not going to be surprising if they have a great record. Because, they can beat the Wizards twice without Jaren. They can beat the Spurs. They get the Spurs. They get the Jazz twice. All of them are winnable games. If you remember the schedule breakdown episode, they don't really get to, the elite top teams. I mean, maybe the Nets are going to be an elite team. Maybe the Mavericks are going to be an elite team. But all the teams who I'm like, that team on paper looks better than the Grizzlies, like the Suns and the Warriors and the Bucks and the Sixers and the Celtics, the Celtics are the only one we play in the first month and a half of the season. So the schedule is pretty well set up for them to endure this time without Jaren Jackson Jr. Then when he returns, hopefully the Grizzlies find themselves once again at the top of the upper echelon, at least, of NBA teams, as they are, I think, a title contender. They are a title contender. Despite me expressing what things that could go wrong or the concerns I have, I do think absolutely the Grizzlies are one of the better teams in the NBA. They're one of 8 teams that has a better than 2% chance to win the title. By the way, the Raptor model, the 538 Raptor model for the Grizzlies, very optimistic. Also, a lot of computer models, very optimistic about the Grizzlies. They have the same net rating data that I do. They also have a lot of smarter people working on them than I am. They also love the youth of the roster, the youth of the most important players. And they think the Grizzlies are going to be very, very good. Like the 538 model, they called the Raptor model, has the Grizzlies as the 3rd best team, an 8% chance to win the title. They're only trailing the Celtics and Nuggets. If you remember last year, this computer model adored the Celtics all season. And it adored the Celtics when the Celtics weren't that good in the standings. Everyone's like, what's going on? The Raptor model says there's a 50% chance the Celtics make the finals. Guess what? The Celtics made the finals. So this Raptor model has hated the Grizzlies before because of their point differential and stuff. But remember, the Grizzlies' point differential was awesome last year. They blew so many teams out last year. The Raptor model gives the Grizzlies an 8% chance at winning the finals. By the way, it only projects them to win 52 games, which, by the way, hey, that's right where my win projection is at. The ELO forecast, also, by the way, which is a different one of the 538 projections, it also has the Grizzlies with an 8% chance to win the title. And once again, has the Grizzlies as the 3rd best team in the West. These computers, by the way, hate the Warriors. I think the Warriors and Suns are mediocre. I think the Bucks are mediocre, which is kind of funny. So take it with a grain of salt, but hey, the computer models love our Grizzlies. So that's something to look forward to. Anyways, I appreciate you listening to all these episodes. Appreciate all of you guys who have subscribed to the podcast on YouTube. Go watch these shows on YouTube. Also, please write a 5-star rating in iTunes, on Spotify. If you're listening on the Overcast app, go ahead and star these episodes to recommend it for other people. Anyways, I look forward to opening night. Hope that you are having a chance to go to the game or at least watch the game wherever you are. Anyways, talk to you soon. Go Grizz.